Portrait of transportation in the chaotic Sarbagita area. Acting Governor of Bali says it needs improvement. Okay, just had to talk about this because there is some new information here, but wow. I think we all know that. And complete list of UMK in 2025 throughout Bali. Denpasar region increases by 6.5% to Indonesian rupiah 3,298,116. Stay tuned for details on these and other stories. Selamat pagi. Welcome to the latest news from Bali and Indonesia. This is December 18th, 2024, and my name is Bruce. And what is the weather like today? Well, yesterday we just had some drizzles. Today, it's cloudy, and right now at 9 o'clock in the morning, it is 29 degrees Celsius. The humidity is 69%, and the wind speed is 4.5 kilometers per hour. And so the weather goes from, one thing to the next. According to the government weather reports, it is going to be rainy, light rain to medium rain over the holiday period, the next 2 weeks or so, but possibilities of extreme weather. And so in that case, you need to be careful. And at this time of the year, you don't know what's going to happen. Sometimes it rains for hours and hours and hours. Sometimes it rains for 15, 20 minutes, and then it's nice, and then later on it rains again. So just have to go with the flow. But we're not going to talk about any of that today. There is a lot to talk about today and stuff that I'm not going to cover because I'm into keeping this to 10 to 20 minutes and ideally around 15 minutes. And so there will be another video tomorrow to talk about the stuff I didn't talk about today. And so let's get right into it with transportation. Portrait of transportation in the chaotic Sarbagita area. Acting Governor of Bali says it needs improvement. The Acting Governor of Bali, Mahendra Jaya, highlighted the portrait of transportation in the Badung, Denpasar, Gianyar, and Tabanan, Sarbagita area, which tends to be chaotic and unorganized. Yes, not new news. He also invited all stakeholders, both the central level, Bali province, Denpasar city, Badung, Regency, Gianyar, and Tabanan, to improve the face of transportation in the Sarbagita area by working together. This, the acting governor said, requires commitment and large resources, starting from land acquisition, infrastructure development, procurement of facilities to financing services. He said this the other day at the handover of the results of the Sarbagita Electric Bus Rapid Transit, EBRT, and Ulapan Mobility Plan, UMP, studies from the Australian government to the government of the Republic of Indonesia. This happened 2 days ago. According to the acting governor, the current portrait of transportation in Sarbagita does not yet depict the face of advanced transportation that is expected. This is reflected in the dominant use of private vehicles for population mobility. He also highlighted that the growth in the number of vehicles was much higher than the growth in the length of roads. The problem is exacerbated by the poor quality of pedestrian paths, I complain about this all the time, low connectivity and reach of public transport services, and minimal public interest in public transportation. If we do not act immediately to fix this, the condition will get worse and eventually cause economic losses, energy waste, decreased tourism competitiveness, increased stress, respiratory diseases, and other disorders that lead to decrease in the quality of life of the community. And at this event, this turnover of the study, the Australian Consul General in Denpasar was there, as well as representatives from districts and cities in the Sarbagita area. The acting governor also appreciated the Australian government through the Indonesian-Australian Partnership for Infrastructure, KIAT, which has supported various transportation studies in Bali. The study includes the preparation of the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan, SUMP, for the Sarbagita metropolitan area, the Sarbagita Electric Bus Rapid Transit, EBRT, study the Ulapan Mobility Plan, and the Kuta Circulator. For this reason, the acting governor emphasized that improving mobility in the Sarbagita area must be done comprehensively across sectors and across authorities. Improving mobility is not enough by providing public transportation on the main route. There must be provisions of feeders, first mile, last mile transportation, transportation within the area, improvement of pedestrian facilities, spatial planning, management of street vendors, logistics transportation, and improvement of metropolitan governance, a lot, and parking. In closing, he conveyed the commitment of the Bali provincial government to allocate resources and establish policies to support transportation development in Bali in accordance with the results of the Kiat study. One form of this commitment, he said, is the provision of land owned by the Bali provincial government to be used as a depot and the construction of supporting infrastructure needed for the EBRT project and Ulapan transportation services. The Australian Consul General, Joe Stevens, stated that the Australian government will continue to support the development of transportation in Indonesia to be more inclusive and accessible to all groups. One way is to provide safe and sustainable transportation in the Sarbagita area. He continued, Australia has supported through a feasibility study to determine the feasibility of the Sarbagita project on the planned routes. He also hopes that the transfer of knowledge carried out so far can be beneficial for Indonesia, especially Bali. He added that his country was developing a strategy to support equality for people with disabilities. He said, we continue to support equal rights for people with disabilities and focus on women and vulnerable groups by implementing these policies in public transportation. He also proposed the use of zero-emission transportation to prevent congestion in line with global commitments regarding global warming. The head of the Bali Provincial Transportation Agency also said that Bali currently really needs public transportation to overcome increasingly severe traffic jams. As we know, according to him, with domestic and international tourist visits reaching 13 million this year, the burden of travel in Bali will be very heavy. Traffic jams in Bali are not a new issue, yes. In the past, traffic jams occurred because of the many BMOs. Now, because of private vehicles. We hope that Kiat's plan can be a solution for all of us. And let's follow up and finish up on the minimal wage in Bali, because I've been talking about this a couple of times. And so the UMK list has come out, and today, the 18th, is the day that the governor has to sign this, the acting governor has to sign this, and I assume he's going to sign everything as already prepared. So let's take a look at this complete list of UMK in 2025 throughout Bali. So the UMK in Denpasar increased to 3,298,116. What about other regions and regencies? The determination of the 2025 Bali UMP and 2025 Badung UMK has been officially carried out. Based on calculations, the provincial minimum wage UMP in Bali up 6.5%. I've talked about that a couple of times. And so this year it will be, well, next year, 2,996,560. That starts on the 1st. Meanwhile, the 2025 Denpasar UMK increased to 3,298,116, up 6.5%. The increase is quite high when compared with 2024 Denpasar UMK, which was 3,096,823. Apart from Denpasar, several districts have also set the minimum wage figures. Badung has gone up to 3,500,000. Wow. And that's a 6.5 increase. And that 6.5 increase is what Pak Prabowo, President Prabowo, mandated. Apart from Denpasar, other regencies that have set the 2025 Bali UMK, Tabanan, Klungkung, Karangasem, and Badung. Badung, 3,500,000. Denpasar, 3,298,116. Tabanan, 3,102,520. Klungkung, 2,996,561. That's the UMP, the minimum. Karangasem, the same, 2,996,561. Missing from this list, Buleleng, Bangli, Jembrana, and Gianyar. Now, Buleleng, Bangli, and Jembrana all don't have the option of setting their own. They have to go with the Bali provincial minimum wage. And Gianyar, there's no mention of Gianyar here. They can set theirs, and I don't know why it's not in here, but it's not. So the increases are in accordance with the Ministry of Manpower Regulation number 16 of 2025. This takes into account the level of economic growth, inflation, and certain indicators such as components of a decent living. So in 2025, it can be implemented for the government and private companies. Pakrani said that the wage increase not only applies to government employees, but also applies to all private employers who employ employees. Those who are required to follow the wage increase are medium to large companies. The determination of UMSK has been postponed. The UMSK is the sectoral minimum wage. And this was based on the agreement of the Wage Council, consisting of government elements, employer organizations, labor unions, and academics or experts. There were several factors that were considered in the decision to postpone the UMSK. First, the number of businesses in tourism, food and beverage sector in Denpasar has not been recorded. According to academics at the Wage Council, the determination of sectoral wages needs further study. The Wage Council also considers the sustainability of the business sector, because this year the increase in UMP is quite high, 6.5%, different from previous years where the increase was below 5%. And I think last year it was 3.8, if I remember right. Workers hope that companies or employers can follow the provisions of the UMK, because not all companies are able to provide wages to their employees in accordance with the UMK provisions. After the UMK was determined, the Manpower Office has intensified socialization to companies to encourage every company to follow UMK provisions in providing wages to its employees. If a company is reported as not paying the UMK according to the provisions, the service will provide guidance and dialogue to facilitate the interest of both workers and companies. In essence, he said, we are the balancer, maintaining the conduciveness between the company and its workers. During this year, we have not received any reports of disputes between companies and workers. 5 districts that still use the Bali UMP include Bangli, Buleleng, Jembrana, Karangasem, and Klungkung. Those are the ones that go with the minimum. These 5 districts also still hold the lowest UMK amounts in the island of the gods. And as mentioned in the article, not all employers pay that. And so employees can report the companies if they are not paying them right. But a lot of times workers don't do that because they're afraid of losing their jobs. And here's an interesting story about something important that's happening up here in Buleleng, and something that I think most tourists and even some people that are residents here but live in the tourist bubble don't really think about or know. Hundreds of poor families now have toilets. Yes, a lot of people don't have toilets still in Bali. When I first came here, it was very common not to have toilets in your house. People use the river, people use the ocean, people had an outdoor toilet. There was a variety of different ways to satisfy your bodily needs. There are still areas, and especially when you get up into the hills, into the mountains, where people don't have that. So as many as 200 families of extremely poor residents in 10 villages in Buleleng region now have toilets. They were assisted by the central government through the community-based sanitation program, which consists of 1 bathroom cubicle complete with a septic tank. The assistance has been carried out independently since the middle of the year. Each village received a budget of $350 million to build sanitation for target residents. This assistance was spread across 10 villages in Buleleng, including Dencharik, Kalangasem, Temukus, Tigawasa, Sepang, Lokapaksa, Tejakula, and a few others. The entire construction was finally completed and handed over in early December. The sanitation building can now be used by the target families. Head of the Buleleng Public Works and Spatial Planning, PUTR agency, said yesterday that the Sanamas, this program, aims to improve access to sanitation, cleanliness, and environmental health. The target is prioritized for extremely poor families that are at risk of stunting. In addition, the target villages are villages where many residents still do not have toilets, but also have other requirements like a water network. Regarding the availability of family toilets in Buleleng, it was said by authorities that after completing these 200 families, it's predicted that there will still be many people who need the same assistance, although accurate data relating to families do not have toilets is still very dynamic and changing rapidly along with population growth and the formation of new families every year. This condition makes the PUTR Buleleng service continue to fight for the budget at the center accessing this community toilet assistance. Routinely submitted every year. This year we've also submitted for 2025, but we're still waiting for the readiness of the budget that will be approved according to an official from Banyuasri. And finally, something on the weather and how it's affecting residents of Buleleng and specifically Singaraja. In the last 2 months, Buleleng Fire Department handles 28 reports of reptiles entering houses. The impact of the recent rainy season, incidents of reptiles entering residential areas have occurred frequently in Singaraja City. the Buleleng Regency Fire and Rescue Service received reports of requests for evacuation of wild animals such as snakes and monitor lizards. Even the number of reports of requests for evacuation of animals entering homes to the Buleleng District Fire and Rescue Service has increased. From the data obtained, there are at least dozens of wild animals such as snakes and monitor lizards that enter residents' homes, not ours yet, fortunately. Acting head of the Buleleng Fire and Rescue Service said that recently his party has received requests often to evacuate disturbances caused by wild animals. He said there have been 21 snakes and 7 monitor lizards that have entered the houses starting from early November up through now. He said most of the reports of wild animal evacuations came from residents living in Buleleng district area, especially right here in the city. The increase in evacuation reports was partly due to the influence of the rainy season. Apart from the rain factor, the increase in reports is also due to the habitat of these animals starting to decrease as we build more and more things here. Meanwhile, if we look at the handling of snakes and monitor lizards throughout 2024, there have been 151 reports of snake evacuations and 39 reports of monitor lizards. In addition to receiving reports of snakes and monitor lizard evacuations, officers often receive evacuations of wasp nests. Until now, there have been 28 reports of those. Arya said the snakes and monitor lizards that have been evacuated by officers will be secured at his office while his party communicates with the Wildlife Conservation of the Natural Resources Conservation, KSDA. Then they will be handed over immediately to KSDA. As for the wasp nest, we will immediately release it. Release it where? I don't know. So, a problem here, and I know we have another house. My son has a house out to the west of us in a new housing development. And when I was there last time, residents were over at a creek just down maybe 50 meters from my son's house, full of snakes. And, well, their homes have been demolished by these developments out there in what used to be Sawa. Okay, that is it for today. Thanks for viewing. Be kind to someone today. Take care, and I will see you tomorrow.